Howdy. In this video, we're going to go over Azure storage accounts. So what are Azure storage accounts? Basically, just allow you to store all kinds of different data into a storage service. So you could store, text data, binary data, videos, pictures, log files, database backups, and all kinds of stuff. And if you've gone through this video series with me, we've created a web server and all of that. So we'll kind of use something that we would use this for is all of our database backups, because our databases could be really big and could be a lot of data. And if we were to store that on our virtual machine disk, that would cost a lot of money. Whereas with the storage accounts, we can store lots and lots of data very cheaply. So instead of paying, a certain amount for a virtual machine disk, we can pay, roughly 2 cents for a blob storage and storage account, or we could even pay, and depending on when we need that data, it could be a lot cheaper than that, which we'll go over. But for the most part, storage accounts it's store all kinds of different data, very cheap, and you're also able to access all of this data through a URL. So you can just access a regular URL, like you do a website, and you can actually get your data. So that's pretty cool. But you can also protect it, so there's security behind it. So you can open it up to the public. You can keep it private if you want. You can allow just certain individuals have access to this and different things. So this will be a couple part. This video will extend to maybe 2 or 3 different videos for storage accounts. But for right now, let's just go over storage accounts and what they can do. And I'm just going to kind of walk you through creating the storage account, and then in the next video we'll actually start storing a little bit of data and all of that. All right, so let's get started. So let's go to our portal. So at our portal, so storage accounts. So it's just another service, just like usual. We don't have any storage accounts set up, so let's set up a storage account. So just like a lot of the screens, we have an add button. All right, so just like all the other screens, you have a subscription and a resource group here. We're going to use the resource group that we already have created, of course, resource group. Perfect. And then a storage account name. So a storage account name is very important, and this name actually has to be unique to the entire Azure just system. So it's not just unique to your account, but unique to everybody's account in the world that has Azure, because this is how you're going to actually access your data through the URL. So let's just name mine Will Brock. It's probably out there, so it says it does. But if we just named it like Will, that's not there. So it says the storage account name is already taken. So the storage account name is globally, So let's just name that. Location of US East. We'll see US East. Performance, we're going to keep at standard. For the most part, you always want to keep it standard. Premium might be only used for like managed disks and so forth, but keep it at standard. The account kind, this also keep it as the default of storage version 2. There are a couple more. The V1 is older and the Blob storage is older. Microsoft actually recommends to not use any of those, to only use the storage v2. So let's keep that there. And then replication. So we're just storing our data. We're storing all kinds of data. So we want to make sure our data is always available and everything like that. So this replication, there's a few different options. But locally redundant storage means basically, if you're in an availability, your storage will be held in one availability zone in 3 different locations in that availability zone. So if inside of that availability zone, if something goes down, if the one say hardware stack in that availability zone goes down, it'll fall back over to another hardware stack inside of that availability zone, but only that availability zone. If you do zone redundant storage, so your zone redundant storage will be copied from it'll be held in your main availability zone, but it'll also be synchronously replicated to 3 different availability zones inside of your region. So local redundant storage is going to be replicated inside of that one availability zone. Zone redundant storage will be replicated to multiple availability zones inside of your region. So with the zone redundant, you get a little bit more flexibility. So if one availability zone goes down, you have other availability zones to go back on. Whereas local redundant, you just have the one availability zone, and you're only protected by the hardware in one part of that availability zone going down. Then you have geo redundant storage, which is going to span data across multiple regions, and then read access redundant storage. So, depending on what your needs are, a lot of times local redundant storage will be just fine. But each of these tiers that you go from are going to be more expensive. So the locally redundant storage is the least expensive. But if you keep going higher, the more expensive it gets to replicate your data. So keep that in mind. So we're going to do local redundant storage. And then you have an access tier of hot or cool. And as we get into other, like the blob storage, you'll see there's an archive as well. But hot storage means, hot is the most expensive. Cool is a little bit not as expensive. So hot is basically like, all right, you might be accessing your data every day. So you need to keep grabbing your data all the time. Whereas cool might be, oh, I only need to access my data, once a month or something like that. So you can do cool, which will be less storage costs than hot. But you gotta understand though, when you pull the data from cool, each time you grab the data from cool, it's gonna be a little bit more expensive than hot. So depending on what you need to do with your data, you can choose if you want hot or cool. And there's also another format of archive, which we'll get into, I think, in blob storage, which is basically like very, very like Arctic cold storage, where you basically like you never grab that data. You basically maybe get it once a year, if at that. You're just storing it for long-term backups, and basically like you just never access it. And if you do actually need to access the archive storage, you actually have to wait a few minutes to actually get it, because it's not highly just basically stored on tape storage. All right, so for what we're doing now, let's store it on hot. Let's see if we have the pricing here. So we can go over a little bit of pricing. So I won't go over the other 3 here, but let's go over block blobs, because that's kind of what we're going to be going over mainly. And I'll get to the different. Actually, let me go over. Let's see. Let's create this first, then we'll go over pricing. All right. So we go to networking now. And like I said before, you're accessing your data through a public URL. So you can have your data publicly, or you can have it privately. So we can choose public endpoint, and that basically is just going to allow us to hit a URL to get our data, and it can be public. Or we can do a public endpoint through selected networks. So we can say, all right, this could be public, but only allow access through our own virtual network. So inside of our own virtual network. So if we have like a virtual machine inside of here, then we could access it. But anybody else in the world couldn't access that public endpoint unless they come from our virtual network. So that's an easy way to secure it. And then you can also have a private endpoint if you want. We'll go on. We're going to do public right now, just to keep it simple. In the next video, we'll do a public endpoint so we can see how it actually protects it. Next, let's go to advanced. And then you have secure transfer required. So that's either, HTTP or HTTPS. Large file shares, we can, that's enabled or disabled. We're going to choose disabled for now. Blob soft delete. So if you want to delete your so if you want to delete your files and automatically have a backup of them, you can do soft delete. So basically, it won't actually delete the files technically. It'll kind of just version them. So if you do a soft delete, you can say how long it will actually keep the backup for. So if you delete the file, you can say, all right, keep this for 7 days before you actually permanently delete it. So we'll keep that disabled for now, so that way when we do delete a file in our storage account, it'll just be deleted. And then we have data lake storage. So data lake storage is good for very big, large amounts of data. We're going to disable that for now, but you can do data lake storage for, multiple different things. The one advantage of data lake storage, it has hierarchical namespaces. So it actually has like a regular file system. So you actually have folders and regular folder structure. Whereas what we'll be going into, you don't have regular folder structures, which you'll see in a little bit here. But for now, we're gonna disable the data lake storage. And data lake storage is actually the same price as regular blob storage, but you're going to pay a little bit more in transfer fees, I believe, and storing the metadata for the namespaces here for the folder and directory structure. So it is going to be a little bit more. It's going to be more expensive than your regular blob storage. All right, so let's create that now. Yeah. So let's create this, and then you can kind of see what we're getting at with the blob storage, and I'll go over that real quick. So this is going to take a minute to create. All right, so it's created now. So let's go to that resource. All right. So you've heard me talk about blob storage a little bit. So that's kind of mainly what we're going to be going over is blob storage in this video and the next video. But with storage accounts, you have 4 different types of services to store data. So you have your blob service, you have a file service, you have a table service, and then you have a queue service. So the blob storage basically allows us to store unstructured data. Basically, it's an object storage. So it's really good for storing database backups or just images, videos, kind of anything like that. It's basically just just store whatever, and all of that. One thing to know, it does not have a folder structure, which is interesting, but it has containers. So we'll see that in just a second. But then this file service, which is a file share, which is going to be a lot more expensive than your blob service. So you don't really want to use this with backups too much because it'll get rather pricey. But you can actually take this file service and mount it to a virtual machine if you wanted to. Then you have a table service, which you can just store a key value pair. So just like a basic table storage, and you can do key values. And then you have a queue service where you can just store message queues, basically. But for the most part, we're going to go over blob service now, or in these videos. So let's create a basic blob. So you have a container. So basically everything starts with a container. So let's add a container, foobar. And I'm just going to create this now so you can just see what we were doing. So then we have a container. You can almost think of a container almost like a file or almost like a folder, because we can have multiple containers like Baz. Let's create that. So now we have just these 2 containers, and then inside of these containers we can create, or we can add files. So let's just add a quick file here. Let's just upload. And I'm just going to create this quick just so you can see, so I don't keep rambling on and you don't see anything happen. But so let's click on this, and then we should get here. So you see here URL. Hopefully you can see that. You see if you can see that. So you see how it gives us just a URL. So we can actually access this file, this image that we just uploaded through a URL. So let's copy that and let's just paste as an example. So I get denied. So by default, it's denying us. So let's give us some permissions. Let's click this, change access level, and we'll give it permissions here. And I'm going to go over all this in the next video, but just to get an idea. So it usually takes a few seconds for that to take an effect, but you can see now we can actually see that image that we just uploaded. So let's go back to our containers. So we have our containers, and the Baz is a container and foobar is a container. And then we have no files inside of here, but we have a file inside of foobar. You know, we can add more files if we want to. So we have our first storage. Like this is, so we've stored a file, you know, and we can access it through a URL. You know, so that's pretty cool. All right, so you can kind of see what we're doing. So let's go back to just regular storage accounts. All right, this is the one we created. And I just want to go over a few more things in general about storage accounts, and then we'll go more in detail about the blobs. All right, so let me hide that. All right, just a few things you can see here. Access tier is hot. Local redundant storage, good. And you can see the different services we have here. And then you have different ways to secure your data. You can use you can use Azure Active Directory. You can use access keys here, or you can use shared access signatures as well. So the access keys basically, it gives you a connection string here, where you can use that, through different programs you maybe need, like let's say a Node application or Python application. You can use the connection string here, and that's one way to programmatically allow access to your storage account. Then you have shared access signature, which gives you more fine control. So you can say, you can create this and say that, like, all right, I want to give developer A, developer Johnny, access to this to the service, containers, and the objects inside of the container. So the objects are like your files inside of the blob. And then you can specify what permissions you want Johnny to have. If you want, maybe just let him read the files. Read and add. Read, add, create, but not update. So you can do that. And then maybe you only want to allow him to do this for like 1 week. So you can say, all right, you'll change the time here and say, all right, Johnny can only view this for the next week, Or maybe you had a contractor you hired and you only needed that contractor to have access for 1 week. That'd be a good example. And then maybe also based on IP addresses. So you could restrict access to somebody based on what IP they come from. So you can restrict based on that. And so then when you generate this secure or shared access token, it's going to also give you some connection strings, which these connection strings you can also use in client applications. So like programmatically you can use it, or there's a thing called Storage Explorer, you can use it. So then you can give this, you can share this connection string to somebody, and then they'll be able to access it with that. You can also, with storage accounts, you can host static websites. I'm not going to get into this too much, but it's kind of like, think of like serverless architecture. You can actually host your HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and your images on these storage accounts. And then properties. So you can see different properties. So you can see the blob service that we just went over, how we get it. This is the URL it gave us. So you remember when we created our storage account of Will Brock? That's what this is here. You got that? And then if you use any of the other services like file service, queue service, table service, and data lake, you have different URLs here. And then another thing we have is a storage explorer here. This is in preview. But you have a storage store, and this just kind of gives you a nice way of just managing your data. And so Storage Explorer, you can actually download this. So anybody can just download Storage Explorer to your computer. So it's a desktop application. And it's a little bit easier to manage your storage outside of just the interface if you want. And then the way people can do that is through your, you can use your access keys or that shared access signature for people to actually access that. But you can see, we go here, you can see our containers here. So we have that, our container, and then our file. Perfect. So Storage Explorer, you can read up a little bit more on that. I'm going to put links to a bunch of different stuff that we've gone over because there's a lot of stuff that Storage Explorer or the storage accounts can do. So I'll post links in the description for all of this, just so you all have it. But the next video we'll go over blob storage a little bit more in depth. But for now, let's look at the pricing a little bit. So blob storage, let's go over the blob storage pricing. So you can see how the redundancy, how you can select which one, and that's going to change the price. If you just do the local redundancy, you can see how hot, for the first 50 terabytes, hot is 2 cents right here for non-premium. Cool is like what we talked about, where the cool storage is, if you're not going to be accessing it that much, is 1 cent or 1.5 cents, and then the archive is 0.00099 per gig. And you can see how the write operations are charged differently. So that's one thing to be aware. Cool storage, if you're going to be accessing your files all the time, you don't want them to be in cool storage because you'll end up paying more for hot in the long run. Same thing with archive as well. But those are the prices there, so you just want to be aware of that. All right, so that's all for this video. Make sure you hit the subscribe button below so you don't miss out on the next video or any future videos. And I'll see you in the next video.